Welcome back to the RacerX Roundtable. My name is Donnie Southers. Joining me today are two RacerX heavy hitters, an online content editor, Kellen Brauer, and the editorial director of RacerX and the voice of the sport, Jason Weigandt. We had a breaking press release drop today that Triumph will officially enter the Super Motocross Championship scene with a 250 class effort in 2024 before debuting in the Premier class in 2025. Everyone already knows about the involvement of Ricky Carmichael as brand ambassador, but this gives us a bit more clarity about the rest of the team and its structure. It will be led by team principal Bobby Hewitt, with Steven Westfall acting as team manager, AMA Hall of Fame inductee Dave Arnold as the lead chassis engineer, and Dudley Crammond as the lead powertrain engineer. Although this announcement is huge, we still don't have anything about the bike, no renders, no colors, no nothing. Weege, I know you were able to meet with the Triumph team recently. What can you tell us, if anything, about the bike that Triumph is building?
Yeah, Donnie, they're being very careful, very slow with the rollout. They even mentioned that, they announced the MXGP intentions to race at Donations in September and didn't show a bike then. They know people want to see the bike. They didn't show the bike here in December. They know people want to see the bike, but they're being very, very careful. And I have to admit, we have seen other brands try to come into the sport and I think do too much too soon. So I kind of understand why they're doing it this way. I mean, they're not racing until Anaheim next year, 13 months from now. So I understand why they want to go slowly, but we still all want the info, which is what does the bike look like? Or what does it even perform like? The engineering, nothing. We have no information on the bike, but we do know they're going racing and who they're doing it with.
No disrespect to Gas making its debut in 2021, but it's no secret that bike is just a red copy of the KTM with silver wheels. How big of a deal is it, Kellen, that we are gaining a brand new manufacturer in the sport building their own bike from the ground up?
Oh, I think it's massive, and I think it's really cool that they're pouring as much effort into this as they have alluded to at this point. They're coming out of their Hinkley facility in the UK, and beyond that, it kind of creates another European option. Obviously, we've had the KTM Gas Husqvarna thing for the last decade here or so. But it's again kind of like taking away from that Japan dominance that we've seen from the manufacturers for quite a long time. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Japan manufacturers are going away, but it adds another element to the sport here where it's like a Europe versus Japan struggle to a degree. So I think that's really cool. But they're clearly pouring a lot of effort into this, and they're not holding any punches back on it. They want to put their maximum foot forward. They want to wait and make sure that they have a machine that's ready to go. And as we've seen from this press release, they were able to court some pretty big names to help put this program together that is not going to, make them roll over from the start. I think they're coming in with the idea that they want to be competitive from the beginning. And that's huge for anybody that's looking to maybe even sign up for this program.
Yeah, and obviously the biggest fans of the sport are familiar with what Bobby Hewitt has built over at Rockstar Suzuki that later became Rockstar Husqvarna. But Weege, can you remind those who may not have their finger at the pulse of the sport what Bobby and Scuba Steve Westfall are bringing to this new team?
Yeah, you got to look at it as quality and quantity. So numbers wise, this was the team, Scuba and Hewitt working together. They got the 2018 Monster Energy Supercross Championship with Jason Anderson and a ton of championships with Zach Osborne, two 250 Supercross titles, 250 motocross title, and a 450 motocross title. But that's just the numbers. I think what's most impressive, if you really look at it, okay, now we look at Osborne and Anderson as legends, right? They're great racers. But that was not guaranteed success in the early days for both riders. And Hewitt stuck with those guys when they were struggling and probably when some other management didn't even want them on the team anymore. He really built it. So it's one thing to go out and just give the most talented rider a huge check and win, but they built the Osborne Anderson championships from the ground floor. So it kind of means that whoever they get involved with, you got to give respect to say a couple years down the road, they might be able to develop that same type of thing with any rider they pick.
I noticed in some specific language in the press release, the word bikes, plural, was used for the 250 announcement, and just singular bike was used in the 450. Kellen, can we expect to see Triumph enter the sport similar to how Gas did with like a three-rider team consisting of a 250 on each coast to keep things kind of simple?
I think that that's definitely a real possibility. I think a lot of it kind of depends on the budget that they want to put forward. Obviously, to get a marquee 450 rider, you're probably spending more budget to do that than you would on a 250 bike. So for them to enter the sport in the 250 class, I think it gives them a framework of what they're going to have to spend to get a guy or get a couple guys on their team and then they can build from there. I don't necessarily think that that means that, if they start with one 450 rider, they're sticking with one 450 rider long term. But it's a good way to, like I said, get their feet wet and know really what they're up against in, the premier class with a top level talent.
One thing I want to mention real quick, it is only a 250 team in 24. That's both in Europe and in the US. The 450 program we'll see in the GPs and in the US starting in 25.
Perfect. AMA Hall of Famer Dave Arnold has been penned as the lead chassis engineer. Dave, of course, was the team manager of that golden age at Honda from the early 80s until his departure before the start of 95. And he then went on to have a 20-year career in R&D, working with Factory Connection, Alta, KYB, and KTM. And then engine development will be in the hands of Dudley Crammond, who was most recently part of the factory services, which is the race engine department for Rockstar Husqvarna and Red Bull KTM. Triumph, obviously, like you mentioned, based in the UK. Do we think all signs point towards a more European-style platform for the 2024 Triumph? Obviously not based off of the KTM, but it's going to be more similar to that than what we see in Japan.
It's really hard to say. I mean, we all know the line in the sand is pretty much the Japanese brands have aluminum frames and the Austrian brands run steel. They are not revealing any details on the bike whatsoever, except the fact that they want to make it very clear that this is 100% engineered and manufactured by Triumph. This is not a partnership. They're not working with an existing brand or anything like that. And I was even surprised when this news first came. Triumph is not really in our orbit in motocross, supercross, right? I didn't even know necessarily if Triumph was still the same ownership that it was. Yes, it is still the same family ownership in the UK, like it's always been for 100 some years. But they were just never playing space. So as far as what the bike's going to look like or be like, I don't even want to guess on that. But you really hit the nail on the head. Dave Arnold, that's probably the most successful motocross team ever. Team Honda from the early 80s to the mid 90s. He was the team manager the whole time. Went from works bikes to production bikes. You cannot fault the resume of Dave. And he eventually moved on to be real R&D at Honda, like cars. Like that's how much of an engineering brain he has. And then Dudley also worked with Ducati, and then you mentioned factory services. So they're bringing in great people. And one other thing they defined that I did not know, we've seen Ricky Carmichael's connected to this project, but I don't think we really knew what his exact role was. He wanted to make it clear he's kind of like a general manager. He helped pick a lot of this talent. And I think especially on the Hewitt and Westphal side, he's like, these are the guys we need to go with. So they got some heavy hitters personnel-wise.
That's exciting.
Yep.
I mentioned Gas earlier. That they launched their race team with Gas's fun campaign, and they signed Justin Barcia, leaned heavily into his personality, having him bring the baseball bat at A1 and all that. Triumph has gone completely different, like you said, Weege, bringing in winning pedigrees with Hewitt, Arnold, as well as Ricky Carmichael as the face of the company because he's been the face of the sport for most of our lives. Kellen, what type of guys do you think Triumph will target for their inaugural season? Do we see Bobby and Scuba rekindle some of their relationships with past Rockstar guys?
Well, I definitely think that that's one of those things that a lot of people assume could happen or might happen at some point in time. It definitely has to depend on what free agents, I guess, are available for them, depending on who they want to go after. But I would say, based on what I've seen of how they're building this brand up from these press releases and these announcements so far, that they're really, I think, almost trying to target someone that really can develop this machine, develop the program from a lower level to a higher level pretty quickly. It seems to me that they're putting something together that's really kind of more professional, more on like almost the F1 and MotoGP side. And when you see a new program come into, F1 or MotoGP, they try to get like almost an experienced veteran that has, the wherewithal of testing the machine and knowing, what works and what doesn't within a program. So I don't know that, we could pick names necessarily, but I would almost look there for someone that's not, brand new to the 250 or 450 class, but someone that has that experience on a machine and knows how to bring it from a lower level to a higher level. I think that's who they're going after.
The team has a start date of 2024. Is not just a target date. They said they will be fielding a team in the 250 class next season. Weege, I know you were involved with the announcement event at Angel Stadium. Is it appropriate to say that the vibe was confident when speaking with the members of the team?
Well, yes, but I think they also know that people would love for them to race in January of 23 and would love for them to reveal the motorcycle. So there's a little bit of a push and pull there. They're excited, and I think they're dying to show people, but they also know today when this news comes out, people are going to be disappointed and saying, but I just want to see the bike or tell me who's racing for the team. So it's a little bit of both. In the end, I kept telling them, I mean, it really doesn't matter. We're going to see the bike at some point. At some point, it'll be racing. We just need to be a little more patient. But I think they know that that's a little disappointing, that we just want to see the bike at this point. Like you said, we don't even know the colors. It was pretty obvious that they're all wearing black with yellow trim on their clothing, and the logos they had set up at the press event were those colors. So maybe we can assume they'll be black and yellow. But if you think yellow's up for grabs, Suzuki just got a big shot in the arm. Ken Roczen, yellow might not be as rare on the racetrack as maybe people were thinking 2 years ago.
That's very true. And then, like, by the time that they enter the premier class of 2025, the class will look completely different. Tomac, Varsha, Anderson, Roxon, Wilson, Muskin, Malcolm will all be over 30, and I would wager at least half of them will be retired by the time Triumph enters. But of the ones that stay, Kellen, for just a little bench racing, which one of those guys would you think would make a great match for the Triumph seat in the Premier class? I imagine it would be a hard sell to get someone in their championship prime to jump aboard an unproven team like that. So who would be a guy that you think would be a great leader to help develop this bike?
Man, it like I said, it's a tough question to answer. As you've alluded to, all of those guys are going to be over 30, so they're going to be well experienced. We probably look to Jason Anderson as one of those guys that he's going to be out of his Cowie contract at the end of this year. Maybe he signs a 1-year deal, and then he's always talked about how much he loves Bobby Hewitt. Maybe he would like to end his career there. But it's really tough to say, because I think you really have to almost look at who is going to test that bike the best. We've seen a lot of teams lately almost bring on like a third guy as a test rider. Most recently with Honda, when they signed Colt Nichols, they looked at him as an extension to their already existing test rider in Trey Kennard. So if you have someone like that that is a little bit more versed with the machine, I think that's where they really want to go. Who that's going to be, I think it kind of just depends on the free agent market at that specific time. But I think we'll know probably by the end of this year who will be a free agent at the end of 2024, and who would be someone that they could go after.
Very true. Final question for both of you. Obviously, if you ask the team what their goals are for the first year, they're going to say championship. But what would you consider a win for this brand new squad in the first season? Kellen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think honestly, consistent main events, consistent points finishes is something that's a great start for any brand that's coming in, especially with this one coming in with a whole new machine that we've never even seen before. The chances of stuff breaking and failing and stuff like that is something that they really want to not have happen in the first year. I think it would really make them not look good or appetizable to free agents, and it also wouldn't make them look good in the public eye when they're trying to actually sell the motorcycles. So to be able to finish races consistently, get good points finishes, as much as they would like to win or say that they would like to win, I think you have to almost walk a little bit before you run in that manner. So I would think that would be a big goal for them.
Weech?
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing. I think reliability is paramount. We don't often see new manufacturers come into the sport. That's why we always bring up Cannondale, which tried this 25 years ago, and their bikes broke all the time. They were developing their bikes in the public before they were even on sale. They were trying to race them. That didn't work. And then once the vision of pushing motorcycles off the track got stuck in the public's mind, it was an uphill battle they could not climb out of. So I think reliability, I mean, we take that for granted at this sport, that DNFs don't happen very often, but I don't think they can take it for granted. So I think, and then to Kellen's point, depends on who they hire. If you hire the most high profile win or bust rider in the sport, then you have to win. But if you hire a veteran guy who's been around, I don't think the standards for results are as high right off the bat. So I would think they're smart enough to know winning immediately is tough. So you don't necessarily go after a guy. Okay, so when Eli Tomac got on Yamaha last year, if he doesn't win, it's a disaster because it's Eli Tomac. I don't know what level rider they'll go for, but I would have to wonder if they're going to hedge their bets. And one other point I want to bring up, I believe this is going to be a Georgia-based operation. That's where their U.S. headquarters is. They've not mentioned California in any way, shape, or form. I believe the race team, the testing, the tracks, I think it's going to be all Georgia-based. They haven't said it, but I think that's where everybody's going to work and operate out of. So we kind of saw Star Yamaha innovate a little bit with the goat farm. This team's not going to work out of the goat farm. Don't read it in the Carmichael connection. Yamaha or Star owns the goat farm. Carmichael's out of that. But I think you're going to see the race shop, tracks, headquarters, all based in Georgia, which is a big step. We don't see that with any manufacturer. KTM's still in California. Everybody's still in California. Star has a shop in Florida and Georgia, But that'd be pretty big, I think, to have a manufacturer completely based not in California.
That's very true. Any other final remarks?
Don't sleep on these guys. They picked. If Carmichael wants to call himself the general manager, he can crow about it because these are legit people. And what I think is impressive, this is to me Triumph saying, we admit this is not our playground. We have not been here before. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're going to find experienced people to tell us the best way to do it. So that's impressive to me.
Great. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And we'll hope to hear more about the Triumph stuff over the next 389 days.
Cool.